يتدبرون القرآن
ولو كان من عند غير الله لوجدوا فيه اختلافا كثيرا
فلا يتدبرون القرآن ولو كان من عند غير الله لوجدوا فيه اختلافا كثيرا.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا. من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له، وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. اللهم بارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم في العالمين إنك حميد مجيد. The Qur'an, the book of Allah, the miraculous words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's a pleasure for a Muslim to recite the book of Allah, to ponder over the meanings of the miraculous words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and to act according to what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from us, from the protected revelation from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This Qur'an, the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if we would ponder over every word in the Qur'an, this can take us years and years. A book that nobody would ever be satisfied with just one time of reciting it. The believers, they keep on reciting it over and over again. And every time they recite it, they gain more and more benefits, because this is the miraculous words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Any other book on the face of earth, you might read it once, twice, 3 times, and that's it. The book of Allah, the Qur'an, the more you recite it with the truthfulness and having the proper intention to seek the pleasure from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone, and the more we ponder over it, the more we get the benefits from the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is something that is endless, never ends. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us among those who benefit from the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We're still in the beginning of Surah Al-Baqarah, in the verse number 34. And somebody might say, for months we're still in 34, verse number 34 in Surah Al-Baqarah. Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu anh, it was mentioned in some of the narrations that he stayed for 8 years reciting and pondering and explaining Surah Al-Baqarah, so that he would get the benefits of the surah. And one important thing that we need to realize, that an-niyyah or intentions goes far beyond our actions. If we have the intentions to go from the beginning to the end of the book of Allah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the most merciful. If our life is too short, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's mercy is so vast that the rewards is given for those who have the intentions to go through the book of Allah, one verse at a time. Each time they would benefit, and the intentions is to act according to what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from us. And as it's mentioned before, it is our duty to recite the Qur'an. Sometimes we need to recite it without having to stop for a long time to ponder over the meaning, seeking the rewards from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with the recitation. We need to have a time in which we would listen to the explanation of the Qur'an, to ponder over the verses of the Qur'an, and we need to to learn the rulings and to act according to the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If a person have the ability to memorize the book of Allah and to spend the time and the effort in doing so. Verse number 34, still in the story of Adam alayhi salam. It's another story within the story that started with verse number 30, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وَإِذْ قَالَ رَبُّكَ لِلْمَلَائِكَةِ إِنِّي جَاعِلٌ فِي الْأَرْضِ خَلِيفَةً. That when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said to the angels that He would have a Khalifa on the face of earth, and that is Adam alayhi salam, and we talked about that. Then in verse number 34, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم وإذ قلنا للملائكة اسجدوا لآدم فسجدوا إلا إبليس أبى واستكبر وكان من الكافرين. Which means, وإذ, we heard it before, وإذ قال ربك, here وإذ قلنا. When we hear وَإِذْ, it means and remember, and remember. And the reason why it's mentioned, as the ulama they say, is to bring the attention that this is another story. This is something that it needs the attention of the reciter of the Qur'an, that this is something else, more benefit to be learned from the story of Adam alayhi salam. And remember, وَإِذْ قُلْنَا, when we said to the angels, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said to the angels, لِلْمَلَائِكَةِ, and we talked about the angels and how they are strong creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created them from light. They are never bored when it comes to the acts of worship. They are given that in their instinct, continuously supplicating and worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَإِذْ قُلْنَا لِلْمَلَائِكَةِ, when we said to the angels, أُسْجُدُوا لِآدَمَ. Usjudu means prostrate, from sujud. This is an order from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to the angels to make sujud, to prostrate before Adam alayhi salam, the first of the human beings. فَسَجَدُوا إِلَّا إِبْلِيسِ. So as a result of that, they prostrated, except Iblis. Iblis is the shaitan, is the devil, the Satan, the head of all the devils. أَبَى وَاسْتَكْبَرَ وَكَانَ مِنَ الْكَافِرِينَ. He refused, he was proud and arrogant, and he was among the disbelievers. So as a result of that, he did not prostrate before Adam alayhi salam. The verse, as we heard, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Most High, honoring Adam alayhi salam. After Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala taught Adam the different names, as we heard before, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ordering the angels to prostrate before Adam. Some of the ulama, they said this was a prostration out of respect and honor to Adam alayhi salam. This is basically the order of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They were not worshipping Adam alayhi salam. This is also something that was in the nations before, as it's mentioned in Surah Yusuf. For example, when the brothers of Yusuf, towards the end of the surah, when they entered on Yusuf with their father, they prostrated before Yusuf alayhi salam. So some said that this is something that was before, to the nations before, that this is an act of being, having honor or dignity or something like this, or respect. But once the Prophet ﷺ was sent, this becomes an act of worship that is not permissible to be done to other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the acts of worship that is only to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala orders the human being to do it to another creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the human being or the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has nothing but to submit themselves to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because some people, when they recite this verse, they would say how Adam alayhi salam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ordered the angels to prostrate before him. When we know that sujood or prostration is an act of worship. And as a fact, acts of worship are not to be done to other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is true. And that's why whoever prostrate to other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this is shirk, this is associating partners with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But in this verse, this was the order of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, a specific order from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to the angels to prostrate and to make sujood to Adam. And after all, the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are nothing but humble creation to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They're supposed to submit themselves to the Most High, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ordered the angels to make sujood, to prostrate before Adam alayhi salam. فَسَجَدُوا, all of them, they submitted themselves. And as we heard before, the angels, they don't have a choice. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created them without them committing any sins. They don't have a choice. They're continuously making the acts of worship and the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So all of them, they prostrated as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ordered them. إِلَّا Iblis, except Iblis. Iblis, the devil, he did not prostrate before Adam as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ordered. We know that shaitan, he is not among the angels. Because somebody might say, how can be shaitan among the jinn, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَإِذْ قُلْنَا لِلْمَلَائِكَةِ اسْجُدُوا, when the verse says that we said to the angels, prostrate. To Adam alayhi salam, Iblis is not one of the angels, but the verse says, إِلَّا Iblis. And this is something that is valid in the Arabic language. And the exception here mentioned that Iblis was among them, but he is not one of the angels. He was in the company of the angels. He was in the company of the angels, but he is from the jinn. And the order from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was for everyone present. And among them was Iblis, but he refused. Out of arrogance, as we heard. And that's why Iblis, or the devil, had these qualities that if it's present in a person, this is the worst qualities that can be present in a human being. or any of the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Aba, which means refused, rejected the orders of who? The orders of the Most High, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the creator of the heavens and the earth. And that's definitely something very clear, that how can a creation of Allah, someone that was created by the Most High subhanahu wa ta'ala, would refuse a clear order from the creator of the heavens and the earth. Something that we need to reflect on, that we as human beings, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created us. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala provides for us. We have no power whatsoever except from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Just think for a second, if the human being would think for a minute, think truthfully about our nature and how weak we are compared to the other creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the one that created us and provides for us, that we cannot live without the bounties and favors of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When a person then would clearly and bluntly disobeys the orders of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, how can that person deserves to have any goodness? And that's why the disobedience and sins, it's such a severe thing if we really think about it. And a lot of people, they would disobey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala out of forgiveness or arrogance or ignorance. And that's why we need to learn and we need to get to know what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from us, so that we submit ourselves to the orders of Allah. Many people, they know that it's not permissible to associate partners with Allah, but they do. Many people know that it's not permissible to abandon the orders of Allah, like the salah for example, but they still become in state of forgetfulness and stay away from obeying the orders of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Some people, they know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forbade on them certain sins, drinking alcohol, committing zina, and all different types of sins, but they would still willingly and persistently choose to disobey the Most High, the creator of the heavens and the earth. This is definitely something that the human being need to review that with his own self. That's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created us. Allah created us for a great purpose, and that is to worship Him alone. And when a person imitates the devil, when he refused to submit to the orders of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then we know that this is make the person subjected to the punishment from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So shaitan aba, so this is the first evil quality that shaitan or Iblis had. Aba, refused, was takbara, and he became arrogant, he became proud. The reason why he refused to prostrate before Adam alayhi salam, as it's mentioned in other verses of the Qur'an, that he said that how can I prostrate to someone that was created from clay or from mud, and Iblis was created from fire. So he thought that he is of a higher level. Why? Because he's created from fire, and Adam alayhi salam was created from mud or from clay. So as a result of being proud and arrogant, he refused to prostrate before Adam alayhi salam. But this is again the order from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that's why arrogance can deprive the person from being humble and submitting oneself to the creator of the heavens and earth. As we mentioned before, someone living their life without putting their head on the ground to prostrate and to make sujood to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this is a sign of arrogance in the heart. And the same thing when a person rejects the truth. And this is what the Prophet ﷺ defined arrogance. It's not when a person wears nice clothing. It's not when the person looking good and things like this. This is not arrogance. Arrogance is when the person would reject the truth. When a person would think that he is better than the other human beings. When people would separate themselves based on the color of their skin, or their nationalities, or the wealth they accumulate. So they would have themselves in classes, and they would divide others based on these classes that in many cases, the human being has no say in it. When a person is born black or white, or these types of characteristics, this is by the wisdom of the Most High subhanahu wa ta'ala created all of them. They are the sons of Adam alayhi salam. But you see the arrogance and the ignorance of the human being following the steps of shaitan. Shaitan, he had these qualities. Satan had these qualities. And he is passing these qualities to his followers among the human beings, because he took it upon himself that he would whisper to the human beings to follow him, as we will see. So that's why when we're reciting this, this is not just about Iblis only. This is also for us to learn to stay away from such characteristics. So Iblis, the shaitan, he refused, and he was in state of arrogance. He refused to prostrate to Adam alayhi salam. وَكَانَ مِنَ الْكَافِرِينَ. And he was among the disbelievers. He believed in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, meaning in the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Iblis did, and he was among the angels, in the presence, in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But he is among the disbelievers, and in the day of judgment he will be in the hellfire forever. Which shows that disbelief is not just disbelieving in the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Not everyone believing in the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is a believer. A believer is someone that believes in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that He is the creator, the sustainer, the provider, and that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the only one worthy of worship. In our prayers and our supplications and all of our acts of worship, we turn alone to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And when a person believes in the names and attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, following the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, this is what belief is all about. And for someone to negate the acts of belief, to be among the disbelievers, then definitely this is the misery of this life and in the hereafter. So the shaitan had these three qualities. He refused, he had arrogance and proud, and he was among the disbelievers. Also it shows that some sins, some acts of disobedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala might lead the person to kufr, to disbelief, wal-'ayadhu billah. That's why one of the early generations of Islam, they used to say that al-ma'asi baridul kufr. That means sins can lead to disbelief. When a person disobeys Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if he repents to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the most merciful. And if a person dies in the state of Islam and still had some sins that he did not repent to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then this person will enter Jannah. Either Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will forgive him and He would make him enter Jannah, or that person will be punished as a result of the sin, and then eventually he will enter the Jannah, the paradise of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But if a person dies in the state of disbelief, then their abode, their place is the hellfire forever. But when a person commits a sin, choose to disobey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, knowingly, willingly, that can lead the person to something that is worse. And that's why the shaitan is never satisfied with one status that the believers are in, unless he takes them to the lower status and to the lower level, till he would take them, if he's able to do that, to take them completely outside the fold of Islam. And that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ordered us to stay away from the steps of shaitan, the one that refused to prostrate to the father of all the human beings, Adam alayhi salam. We continue inshallah ta'ala right after the break.
ولو كان من عند غير الله لوجدوا فيه اختلافا كثيرا.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Dear brothers and sisters, welcome to another episode of our series on supplication. It's the fact that it is part of Islam, it's a requirement, it's an obligation, it's a faridah, it's an act of worship that must only be devoted to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, no one other than Allah. He is close to you, He is qareeb, He is all-hearing, so worship Him, make dua to Him, respond to Him, and He will respond to you.
You know, sometimes it's important to take a break. We need to take a break. Take a break from what? From the everyday things, to look at what we're really doing as Muslims. That's why we said we really need to have this program for you and for me, to take a break right here on Huda TV. Stay with us, because we've got a lot coming up on Take a Break.
ولو كان من عند غير الله لوجدوا فيه اختلافا كثيرا.
Alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulullah. Verse number 34 of Surah Al-Baqarah. And as the case with every verse in the Qur'an, there are definitely many benefits that we can learn. And briefly, it shows the honor that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave Adam alayhi salam. And Adam is the father of all the human beings. That means Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala honored the human beings, as it's mentioned also in Surah Al-Isra, وَلَقَدْ كَرَّمْنَا بَنِي آدَمَ, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bestowed His favor on the children of Adam. And He honored them by having the angels prostrate to Adam alayhi salam. But the real honor is when the person would fulfill the purpose of our life. And that's why we see in Surah Al-Asr that all human beings are in loss. إِنَّ الْإِنسَانَ لَفِي خُسْرٍ إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ, except those who believe and do righteous good deeds, and they enjoy what is good, and they enjoy patience. So unless the human being acquire these qualities, then we become in the lowest level and the lowest status whatsoever after Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had honored us. And after Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala provides for us and take care of us and so on and so forth, then it is incumbent on the human being to humble themselves to the Creator of the heavens and the earth alone. It also shows that the orders of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is to be fulfilled. And for those who do not obey the orders of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they subject themselves to the punishment from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ordered the angels to prostrate. And again, as we heard, the order from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if it's something that is not permissible for us to do, to prostrate to a human being, but if it was the order of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to a specific creation of Allah, that means they have to submit themselves to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And there's an example of that mentioned in the Qur'an. Ibrahim alayhi salam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ordered him to slaughter his own child, Ismail. We know that this is something that is not permissible whatsoever for a person to kill his own child, such a major sin. But since this was a specific order from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to one of His prophets, then the prophets and the human beings, they need to submit themselves to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So it shows that we need to be in constant submission to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Most High. We also learn that how the enmity of Iblis, of Shaitan, from the moment that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ordered the angels to prostrate to Adam alayhi salam, from that moment, Shaitan took it upon himself to deviate the human beings, to make them among the people of the hellfire with him in the Day of Judgment. That's why we will see the plots of Shaitan. And if the human being is heedless about this, thinking about Shaitan like a fairy tale, something that is not real. Why? Because we don't see him. He sees us, but we don't see him, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned in the Qur'an. So most of the human beings are deceived by the whispers of Shaitan, but the plots of Shaitan, by the steps of Shaitan. And that's why it's the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we have this revelation for us to get to know the tricks of Shaitan, that it's nothing but whispers, and for us to know what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from us. Also, it shows that Shaitan, Iblis, he became a disbeliever because he refused to prostrate one sajda, one sujood. He refused to prostrate and to obey the orders of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He became a disbeliever. As the ulama, they say, imagine someone that is abandoning salah completely. Someone that is not praying whatsoever. And that's why there is differences of opinions among the ulama. When someone would abandon the salah completely, whether this person is a believer or a disbeliever. So it makes the Muslim ponder over this, so that we stay away from disobeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Also it shows the evil characteristics of the shaitan, so that we stay away from it. The characteristic of refusing to obey the orders of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the characteristic of being arrogance, and the characteristic of being a disbeliever. We also learn that shaitan is not one of the angels. He is another creation, created from fire. The angels were created from light. And shaitan is the father of all the jinn, and he is the evil one, and he is someone that whispers to the human beings. Then the next verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَقُلْنَا يَا آدَمُ اسْكُنْ أَنْتَ وَزَوْجُكَ الْجَنَّةِ وَكُلَا مِنْهَا رَغَدًا حَيْثُ شِئْتُمَا وَلَا تَقْرَبَا هَذِهِ الشَّجَرَةَ فَتَكُونَا مِنَ الظَّالِمِينَ. Which means, and we said, Ya Adam, O Adam, uskun, anta wa zawjuka al-jannah, which means dwell, stay you and your wife in Jannah. The wife of Adam, Hawa, and the name Hawa is mentioned in the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. They translated as Eve. She is the wife of Adam, and that shows that the relationship between men and women, the marriage, this bond, is something that is from the first creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala among the human beings. That when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created Adam, He created Hawa or Eve from his rib, and she was his wife. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said to Adam and his wife, dwell in Jannah. Uskun anta wa zawjuka al-Jannah. This is the Jannah, the paradise that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala prepared for the believers? Or it was a different Jannah on the face of earth or somewhere else? Some people talk too much about this, and of course the correct opinion among the ulama, that this is the Jannah. This is the paradise that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created for the believers. Someone might say, but then Adam alayhi salam was driven out of Jannah, and we know that whoever enters Jannah, he would stay in it forever. This is only after the ba'th, after the resurrection. After the person is resurrected, if a person would enter Jannah, then there is no out of it, that the believers will stay in Jannah forever. But for Adam alayhi salam, when he first entered Jannah, this was the Jannah that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala prepared for the believers. And the evidence of that is that the word Al-Jannah is mentioned. And the Alif and Lam here in the word Al-Jannah, which means it's a specific thing, and that is what is mentioned in the Qur'an. The word Al-Jannah means the Jannah that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala prepared for the believers. So Adam alayhi salam was in Jannah, in the heavens, the one that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created for the believers. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said to Adam, you and your wife to dwell in Jannah. This is another honor from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and another favor from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to Adam and his wife. وَكُلَ مِنْهَا رَغَدًا حَيْثُ شِئْتُمَا. وَكُلَ means and eat, both of you, minha, from the Jannah, رَغَدًا حَيْثُ شِئْتُمَا, which means with pleasure. Wherever you are, it doesn't matter what time is it, doesn't matter what place of the Jannah that you are in, eat with pleasure. Eat from the provisions from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, with delight, all forms of pleasure that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave Adam and his wife in Jannah. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave them a condition for them to stay in Jannah. A test. وَلَا تَقْرَبَ هَذِهِ الشَّجَرَةَ فَتَكُونَ مِنَ الظَّالِمِينَ. Do not approach this tree, a specific tree. فَتَكُونَ مِنَ الظَّالِمِينَ. Otherwise you will be among the ظالمين, the transgressors, the wrongdoers, those who commit injustice against their own selves. This is a test from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to Adam alayhi salam. Do not approach this tree, هذه الشجرة. If you read in the books of tafsir, you would see some of the ulama, they say that this is the grape tree or apple tree or whatever trees that are being mentioned in the books of the people of the book. But the correct opinion, since it's not mentioned in the Qur'an what type of tree it is, it's a specific tree, not a specific type of trees. It's a specific tree, one tree only, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forbade Adam and his wife from eating from it. This is a test from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the most wise. And that means that we might be tested in things in our life that fits our desires. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the most wise, He would forbade us from it for a wisdom, for a great wisdom. And it doesn't mean that anything that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forbade us from doing, you would find the human being with his own instinct being away from it and dislike it. Actually, it's not the case. But it's the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that anything that is being forbidden on us to do, you would find that this is evil. It contradicts the purpose of our life, and that is to be obedient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It also contradicts the life of purity and goodness and harmony for human beings to live together. And that's why anything that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forbade, He subhanahu wa ta'ala made so many things permissible for us. If you take, for example, things that we eat and drink, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made all the things on the face of earth permissible for us to eat and drink, except very few things. When a person chooses to drink wine and things of intoxications, leaving all the different things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us to drink, water and juice and many things, why would a person choose something to intoxicate himself, which is in itself evil by nature? And this is something that will cause so much harm to one's physical body and to one's attitude and relations with others, and it will be a means for the person to commit sins and crimes and so on and so forth. And this is just an example. So the sins or the things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forbade us from doing is not just for the test, but it's something that also shows that it's because it's impure. Something that would contradict the life that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants the believers to live on the face of earth. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave this test to Adam and his wife. if they would eat from that tree, they will be among the zalimeen. We would see here, and we learned, that the Jannah mentioned is the Jannah is the one that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala prepared for the believers. It shows that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Most High, we believe in the characteristics of Allah, the attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks. And that's why the Qur'an is the speech of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But as a fact, nothing is the like of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And He's the all-hearer, the all-seer. We see that marriage, it's something that was there from the beginning of the creation of the human beings. And that's how this unit, this family unit, the relationship between husband and wife, something to be honored and respected. And that's why there are many verses in the Qur'an that talks about this relationship, that this is an act of worship that we need to learn how to perfect it and how to fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in living these types of relationship. And this is something since Adam alayhi salam. So we need to witness the wisdom of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and to learn the orders of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It also shows the delight and the pleasure that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made for the believers in Jannah, that He said to Adam alayhi salam and his wife to eat from Jannah, from wherever he wishes, with delight and pleasure. But as a fact, on the face of earth, that nobody would reach his delight with another delight. Which means that if you want to earn money, you have to work and to put some effort. This is in the nature of how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created the earth and the laws that governs the lives of the human beings. The same thing. Whoever wants to go back to our original place, and this is something that we learn from here, that Jannah is our place. Jannah is the home for the believers. And that's why when the believers are away from it, they feel the strangeness till they go back to the Jannah that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala prepared for the believers. We have a phone call. The name is Sister Fifi from UAE. Please go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa barakatuh. Go ahead, Jamma.
Yeah, my question is, when I recite the Quran, I have seen in certain places underline. There is an underline. What does that mean?
Can you say that again? The word?
No, there are in certain chapters, I have seen a line under a word.
Line under the word, okay, sure.
Yeah.
Sure, inshallah. I will answer that, inshallah.
Yeah. Please explain it to me.
Sure, inshallah. Thank you very much. So, going back to the verse, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tested Adam alayhi salam, and tested with something that would make the human being, if they disobey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to be among the zalimeen. And we need to witness the wisdom of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala again, and to see that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created the different laws on the face of earth, that we need to witness that, and people will put effort, as we heard before, in which they would reach the status of delight or pleasure. So the same thing, whoever wants to enter the Jannah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that comes with being obedient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not to relax and to say and to have wishful thinking that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will admit us to Jannah without any actions, without the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is not how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created us, and it's the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He make it easy for the believers. We have another phone call. Brother Ayman from Egypt.
Hello.
No. Go ahead, inshallah.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa barakatuh.
I just first want to say that I watch this program every week, alhamdulillah, and I'm glad it's on.
Allah barak fik. Barakallah.
Yes, I have 2 questions, please.
Sure, inshallah.
My first question is, was the Prophet Adam 90 feet tall in heaven and on earth? That's my first question.
Okay.
And my second question is, from this verse, can we take a lesson that Allah tells the Prophet Adam not only not to eat from this tree, but not to even approach it? Can we take that lesson that, on earth, when it concerns haram things, we shouldn't even approach it?
MashaAllah. Yes. Jazakumullah khair. Thank you very much. Allah barak fik. So, and this is something that we would see in the verse, that how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would order Adam alayhi salam to fulfill the orders of Allah and to stay away from the tree, which is actually, this is a good question, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said to Adam alayhi salam and his wife, وَلَا تَقْرَبَ هَذِهِ الشَّجَرَةِ, which is one of the lessons to be learned from the verse. The order is not to eat from the tree, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, do not approach it, which brings us a very important benefit. But we have another phone call. Sister Noura from Sudan. Please go ahead, inshallah.
Assalamu alaikum, Shaykh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Yeah. I have two questions regarding the Surah Al-Baqarah. The
Sure.
first is in verse 30, Allah mentioned that Allah is creating a Khalifa on earth. What does Khalifa mean? What does it mean to be a Khalifa?
Sure.
The second question is for verse 40, in verse 45 Al-Baqarah, it says that seek help and refuge from Allah with patience and salah. But in the translation it says that it is difficult except for the ones who are khushu in their salah. What does that mean? Does it mean that the quality of the salah is very important so that it will be translated into something, into being patient and in receiving help from Allah?
No.
Thank you.
Sure.
Jazakallahu khairan.
Barakallahu feekum wa iyyakum. So the order from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala here is وَلَا تَقْرَبَ, do not approach. And this is something, as the ulama, they talked about it. It shows that when it comes to sins, the orders from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would be as a mercy from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to the human being, because of our weakness, that if something that is forbidden, we need to put certain boundaries or an area in which we stay away from it, as the order from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to stay away from wine and intoxications and things like this, so that the person, once he's there by the sin, then we are weak, and a person might fall into the disobedience of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Inshallah, we'll continue after the break and we answer your questions, inshallah ta'ala, right after the break.
وَلَوْ كَانَ مِنْ عِنْدِ غَيْرِ اللَّهِ لَوَجَدُوا فِيهِ اخْتِلَافًا كَثِيرًا.
خيركم من تعلم القرآن وعلمه ورتل القرآن ترتيلا. Learning how to recite the Qur'an properly, learning the meaning of what we recite, including the ahkam from the verses which we recite, trying to implement what we learn in our daily life. We'll listen to the participants and the guests. We'll take your phone calls. We're going to recite live. We'll listen to your recitation and we'll correct it according to the rules and regulations which we'll state in each episode. Now your dream will come true.
The companions of the Prophet ﷺ, all of them trustworthy. We don't look into their or their adala, if they are trustworthy or not. They are all trustworthy. Following their footsteps will bring us together. It will be part of that robe which binds us as one ummah.
وَلَوْ كَانَ مِنْ عِنْدِ غَيْرِ اللَّهِ لَوَجَدُوا فِيهِ اخْتِلَافًا كَثِيرًا.
Alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. So these two verses, verse number 34 and verse number 35, it's important for us to get the benefits and to see how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala honored Adam alayhi salam, and how the punishment of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala unto those who would disobey him subhanahu wa ta'ala, and how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tested Adam alayhi salam with staying away from the tree. And we talked about that, which is an answer to the question of how to learn to stay away from sins. And this is something that the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam said in the authentic hadith, that for every king there's a sanctuary in which the property of the king is being protected. And that's why the sins is something that we need to stay away from it. Because as human beings we are weak. And once a person would take the means to get closer and closer to the sin, then the sin will overtake the person. And also there's a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ in which he said ﷺ that the fitna or tribulations, whoever would look up to it, it will overtake him. So when a person look up into the fitna or get closer to the tribulations or get closer to the sins, then it means that the sin will overtake the person because we are weak. And that's why we need to understand that, to take the means to stay away physically and with our hearts, to stay away from disobeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then the next verse, which shows that how shaitan made the human beings slip away. But let me first answer the questions, inshallah ta'ala, with from Sister Fifi, the question about the line on some of the verses of the Qur'an. If you see a line on top of some of the words, it means that this is the verse that we are ordered to prostrate and to make sujood after reciting it. And these verses, it depends, 14 verses in the Qur'an, something that the Prophet ﷺ, when he would recite these verses, he would make sujood, he would make prostration. And that's why we follow the Prophet ﷺ in these places mentioned in the Qur'an. So that's why they put the line over the word that has the meaning of sujood or make sujood and so on. And this is something that when the believers would make sujood and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ordered them to make sujood, the shaitan would be so much humiliated and he would say that the human being is ordered to make sujood and he obeys, and I was ordered to make sujood and I disobeyed the orders of Allah, which actually fits the subject that we're talking about today. And this is something to be done in the salah and outside the salah. This is not something that is mandatory. If a person would misses it, there's no sin, but it's definitely something that is very stressed for the believers to prostrate once they recite these verses. But again, there are certain rulings in matters of fiqh. For example, we have to be in the state of wudu. If you're reciting the Qur'an and there is a verse that has a sajda in it, that means you need to prostrate after reciting this verse. That means we need to be in the state of wudu. Of course, in the salah, if people even are praying in jama'ah, if the imam would recite a verse like that, he would make sujood and people would follow him. If people are praying or reciting Qur'an together, and one recites a verse that has a sujood, it depends. If that person makes sujood, then everybody should make sujood. If that person didn't make sujood, then nobody should make sujood. Also, if a person is memorizing the Qur'an, memorizing a verse that has this line or the sajda in it, it doesn't mean that he has to, every time he recites it and repeating it, to prostrate one time is enough. If a person is driving and listening to the Qur'an or in the streets and things like this, and a verse like that would come, or he hears it or recites it, it doesn't have to be that the person would make sujood or even lower their head as a way to make sujood. This is not the proper way. The proper way that if you have the ability to make a proper sujood and to face the qibla and to be in state of wudu, mashallah, this is good. If not, then this is again a stressed sunnah. And Umar radiallahu anhu, to show this fact to the people that this is not something that is mandatory, he was on the minbar, on the pulpit giving the khutbah, and in 1 week he recited a verse that has sajda in it, sujood, and he prostrated. He came down and he prostrated in front of the people to teach them. And then the next Jum'ah he recited the same verse, but he did not prostrate, to show them that this is not something that is mandatory. It doesn't mean that we leave it. Again, it's a very stressed sunnah for the person to do that, and to say Allahu Akbar before you prostrate, and that's it. There's no salam afterwards, there's no tashahud, there's nothing. Just say Allahu Akbar and make sujood, and then after that you get up without saying anything, and that's the end of it. And again, there are certain rulings with this in matters of fiqh. So this is what this line means with regarding to some of the verses in the Qur'an. With the question of Brother Ayman, I missed the first question, so forgive me if you want to call and repeat it again, inshallah, that will be good. But for the second question, and I answered it, and he pointed a very important benefit for us that we ponder, and this is the benefit of pondering over the verse one word at a time. La taqraba, do not approach the tree, which is something that the ulama they mentioned to stay away from sins. Also with the question of the meaning of Al-Khalifa in verse number 30, which we talked about it before, and the meaning of that, it either means that he will be entrusted by the orders of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to fulfill and to pass that to the next generations and so on, or it means that the nature of the human beings, they will be in such a way that they would succeed one another. And this is what Khalifa means. They succeed one another. There's one generation followed by another generation and so on and so forth. So the two meanings are correct, and Adam alayhi salam passed on to the next generation what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ordered him, and one generation come after, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned. We have a phone call. Brother Abdullah from UAE. Go ahead, inshallah.
Wa alaikum ya shaykh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I'm sorry, can you please raise your voice?
Sheikh, my question is,
no.
In verse 34,
Mm-hmm.
Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ordered the angels to bow down to Adam alayhi salam.
No.
I would like to know what is the knowledge behind that. Why did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told them, the angels, to bow down to Adam alayhi salam?
No, sure, inshallah. Jazakumullah khair. So this is again going back to the question from Sister Noura with regarding to the meaning of Khalifa. And then in verse number 45 she said about the verse وَاسْتَعِينُوا بِالصَّبْرِ وَالصَّلَاةِ وَإِنَّهَا لَكَبِيرَةٌ إِلَّا عَلَى الْخَاشِعِينَ, that seek help in patience and salah. And indeed it's kabira, meaning big, except for those who have khushu'. And then after that, the verses after that explains about the characteristics of those who have khushu'. Who are they? And then inshallah, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us life, we'll explain in details. But it shows that salah, which is the second pillar of Islam, the most important action in our life, it's something that only those who have khushu' will be able to perform it. And those who have the humbleness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and again people are in levels, and this is the minimum requirement for a Muslim to have. And the more the person perfect the salah, the more the person will be in the state of khushu'. So it shows that this is something that at times of ease, if a person just would do salah like this without any effort, without being patient, this is not true. Person has to put the effort and to struggle. And again, it's something that is huge and something that is big, and it's entrusted. The human being is entrusted by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to perform such an important obligation. And unless the person is in state of khushu', humbling oneself to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And as we mentioned, making sujood needs for the person to have khushu'. Why would a human being put his face on the ground? The most honored part of our body, when a person put it in the ground, sometimes in the masajid, you would find your head in between the foot of another Muslim in front of you. Right? And this shows the humbleness that the believers are in that state of humbleness physically. And that's why the hearts should have the same state of humbleness and khushu' when the person is in the salah. But when the heart is in state of khushu', then the rest of the body will be also in state of khushu', and we'll talk about that inshallah ta'ala in details. But it means, salah, yes, it's not something that is little, it's something that is heavy, and except for those who have khushu', and they are in levels, and according to their level of khushu', then the perfection of the salah will be accordingly. For someone that, a Muslim, he would perform the salah, that's a level of khushu'. The more the person perfect the level of khushu' and to humble ourselves to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the more the salah will be perfected, and the same thing with patience. The question about the wisdom behind the order of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to the angels to prostrate and to make sujood to Adam alayhi salam. First, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in the Qur'an, لا يسأل عما يفعل وهم يسألون. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not to be questioned, and they are to be questioned. Meaning the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the most wise, and He is the most merciful subhanahu wa ta'ala. And He orders His creation with whatever He wills subhanahu wa ta'ala. Sometimes the human beings get to know the wisdom behind things. And sometimes, and in many cases, things around us we don't know the wisdom behind it. And sometimes in the orders of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to some people might not know the wisdom behind things. And this is also meant. Why is that? And to explain this with a bit detail, you would find, for example, the wisdom and the benefits of certain acts of worship in our life. Like the zakah, for example, obligatory charity. People see how that helps the poor and so on. But in certain acts of worship, many people might not get to see the wisdom behind it. Like the rituals that we do in Hajj. Why we stay on the 9th or the night of Muzdalifah in Muzdalifah. Or why do we go to Arafah, that specific place, and why do we throw the pebbles, and why do we have to do it in such an order that if a person misses this order, that might even invalidate one's Hajj. And we do not know the wisdom behind it, except that this is the way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ordered the prophets to do this, and it's mentioned in the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam for the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, for people to make the dhikr and the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But one of the wisdom behind not knowing the wisdom is to be a true servant and slave of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That a slave is someone that submits. But if people get to know the wisdom behind things about everything that they do, it might weakens their submission. And this is a very important point. It might weaken the submission because now they see the benefit, so they would do the action. But what if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ordered the believers to do something that they might see that it's harmful to them? Should they disobey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? No. They should still submit themselves to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The same when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ordained fighting unto the companions of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and to the ummah of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, when he said to them, كُتِبَ عَلَيْكُمُ الْقِتَالُ وَهُوَ كُرْهٌ لَكُمْ, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ordered you to fight, and it's something that is disliked for you. وَعَسَى أَن تَكْرَهُ شَيْئًا وَهُوَ خَيْرٌ لَكُمْ, and maybe you dislike something and it's good for you, maybe you would like something and it's not good for you. وَاللَّهُ يَعْلَمُ وَأَنْتُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best and you do not know. So the way of having the certainty in the rewards from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the most wise, sometimes we might not able to get the wisdom behind things. But the wisdom behind it, as the ulama they mentioned, is to honor Adam alayhi salam, for the children of Adam to see this honor that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ordered them. And again, sujood in this context, it's not an act of worship, it's not ibadah, it's a way of honoring Adam alayhi salam by the prostration of the angels. So this is the purpose or the wisdom behind it, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us among those who benefit from the verses of the Qur'an. And again, I would ask myself and others to go through these verses and to see the benefit that we need to receive from it, and that should change our life immediately. And that should affect our salah and our ibadah and our night prayer and our kindness towards others and so on and so forth, because this is the effect of the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in our life. وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
أفلا يتدبرون القرآن ولو كان من عند غير الله لوجدوا فيه اختلافا كثيرا.
أفلا يتدبرون القرآن ولو كان من عند غير الله لوجدوا فيه اختلافا كثيرا.
أفلا يتدبرون القرآن ولو كان من عند غير الله لوجدوا فيه اختلافا كثيرا.